I'm in Las Vegas. We are at QlikWorld 2023. I have the pleasure of being joined by Adam Mayer. Adam is the Global Products Marketing Manager for Qlik. Adam, great to see you. Thanks for making time to catch up with me.
Nice to be here, Des. It's great to be at QlikWorld again, in person. All the vibe and the buzz and everything.
Seems
really
a little surreal.
It is, yeah. It's amazing seeing people with legs now, not just a squished shoulder.
Very funny. I've heard that a few times. Oh, you've got legs. Well, the neat thing is that everyone's sort of getting back together. It's a little bit more normal, but also the chance to sort of just talk to each other like this and feed off each other, talk to our birds of a feather and our peers and learn from each other and take it away. But congratulations on pulling it all together. And I think the big thing for me is that the size of the event and the intimacy, and particularly on this expo floor, has meant that we're all close enough to chat and integrate, but not feeling a bit uncomfortable. And the circumnavigation doesn't take too long, and we can go backwards and forwards. But also the size of the main hall for the keynotes was just right, I think.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a couple of key things I want to run through, so let's just quickly. So I wanted to sort of look at the overall trends that you've seen with regard to data analytics, and specifically the impact it's having within the clients you've got and globally, the importance of data privacy and the governance and so forth around that, a few things, and then the impact of real-time data. So let's just start with the overall view of the trends you're seeing, particularly within your customers. You have a very unique lens within that you look through the world with, in your customer base, your role. If we, on a broad level, what kinds of trends are you seeing at the moment with regard to the emergence of sort of data analytics as a general thing being a normal part of business now rather than just some exception?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, I'll just take a step back. So I've been at Qlik for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And actually, fun fact, I had my 6-year anniversary yesterday.
Congratulations.
So, thank you very much.
That's fantastic.
Great to be in Vegas and celebrating it. But Qlik's 30 years old. Mike mentioned he had his 5
big
years.
Ones.
Yeah, 5
Well
years. So it's a day of anniversary, so that's great. But the key thing is I've sort of seen how we've changed as an organisation and the product range that we've dealt with. So I've always been in product marketing here in Qlik. So I kind of cut my teeth on the analytics side.
Okay.
And it was a role that covered the whole portfolio, so have some good ground in there. But the last 3 years, maybe almost 4 years now, I've been focusing on our data integration side of the business. So in terms of the trends there, the key thing that we're kind of seeing is the demand for real-time information is like absolutely and getting it from, and it's the same old Qlik story, is like getting it from a multiple different array of sources. We had Ford talking about they were dealing with over 650 sources, which is just phenomenal.
Eye-watering.
It is, but the good news is that the Qlik solutions that we have on the data integration side really enable customers, and I've heard customers say it's like the key enabler to very reduce complexity. I almost said very easily, but essentially easily connect to those data sources and deliver that data to where it needs to be in the format it needs to be, but do that in near real time through just capturing changes as and when it happens. So that first sort of trend is also a first as in you're hungry for data. Is quite key. And then the other part is really automating it. So getting efficiencies in. Data integration is traditionally seen as very manual. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of high skill sets. So the more automation that you can bring in for those kind of mundane tasks, that's where you start seeing efficiencies really come into going, and that's another sort of key enabler that we've seen in our organisations and customers that use that. So real-time data and kind of automation, and then how do you build out those structures? So it's been a hot buzz around sort of data mesh, data fabric, and as we move to the cloud and bringing our data integration capabilities into cloud, it's very much allowing people to take a kind of data fabric approach, which is more of a kind of pattern in how do you build architectures, but in a quite a structured way, building up the metadata, building up the data movement piece and all that kind of stuff. So kind of embracing and adopting fabric is quite a kind of an emerging trend that's coming along, and then it's this big question about, how does data mesh fit into all it? And how do we do that and decentralize stuff? But the key thing that we're sort of seeing in conversations is it's more treating data as a product rather than focusing on the decentralization stuff, because it's key to have governance across all of that as well.
And what are you seeing with regard to the pivot from sort of on-premises environments, which is where we've all cut our teeth, to the transition to the third-party hosted environments and data centers, to now sort of the cloud-first piece? Where are we at in that space as far as your customers are concerned? Are you still seeing a lot of I guess, long sunk costs that need long-term ROI that still need to be maintained on-prem or in data centers, or are people willing to sort of, in some cases, cut their losses and just move to the cloud and gain the benefits there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think with from our perspective, in terms of putting the capabilities of data integration capabilities into the cloud, that's still relatively new, but there's a lot of excitement and buzz around it, because that will open up a whole load more of efficiencies in terms of reducing the complexities around infrastructure, but also getting access to more sources that are out in the cloud. So the way we are approaching it and the way it's working for our customers is very much a complementary piece. So and actually there's always going to be a use case for on-premise databases that not only like moving it to the cloud, that's kind of like the most common use case, but a kind of on-prem to on-prem kind of use case. And sometimes it needs to be, absolutely can't touch the cloud, so you need to have a solution to be able to cater for those kind of environments as well.
Okay, and I imagine it depends on the size and scale and scope of the organisation as well, because if you're a very, very large organisation with big infrastructure, well, you got a lot of stuff that's out at the edge of the network, or you might be a rail or a utility company, you just can't put power lines in the cloud. But startups, I guess, can adopt that because that, often they're cloud natives, aren't they?
Yeah.
What about we're seeing the emergence of generative AI and the likes of ChatGPT, at the risk of mentioning a brand.
Yeah.
What kind of impact's that having in the immediate term?
Well, I think just generally, again, it's one of those kind of hot buzz things where the way I see it, ChatGPT is definitely, you could say it's disrupting in terms of it's making data more accessible, and it's making it kind of more natural as well. So you've got the typical stories of, hey, my kids just done all their homework on ChatGPT. There's talk around, is it going to take away my job? Because it can just create things, and it can do stuff really well. But also there's that kind of note of caution around it in terms of you certainly don't want to be putting sensitive or company data in there. Anyway. I know Josh mentioned that on stage, and there was a chat around how we do it. So I think it's really, really new, but it holds a hell of a lot of potential, but it needs to be kind of handled with caution in that respect. So I like the way that it's very concept. We say, hey, look, you could do this. So Qlik's quite extensible from at least from the analytics side in terms of all the APIs. We've got a lot of APIs on data integration as well. So I like the way that we kind of framed it in, hey, you could use it to help you find data. You can then help you to describe the data that you've just found, and kind of start and help in a little bit in terms of data availability, and then tell me more about it. And at the moment, it's quite separate. So ChatGPT is built on that kind of large language model that's out there in the cloud, and your data's here from a business perspective. So I think there's still there's a load of conversation, lots of thought. We're talking about it a lot and thinking about it a lot. But hey, where's the real business value and how's it going to be used? So I think the immediate kind of obvious use cases, it reduces that friction to getting access to data. So if you can just naturally type a question without thinking about the kind of syntax that you're putting in, and then you get the answers back in a human readable form, natural language generation, then that's removing some barriers that exist today. And I think that's probably the first and foremost use case. But then the challenge there is how do you sort of offer that in kind of secure and governed way. So I think it's really exciting. And if you think about it today, we've actually got some really neat capabilities that are kind of ChatGPT-esque, but it's our own kind of insights advisor, our own AI, and it allows organizations to kind of draw out insights from their data that they may not know exist. It's kind of, I like to say, like making your unknowns known, and it literally just draws out the insights into the palm of your hands, and then can then sort of help not only the best way to display it, but then to describe it and things like that. So we have product capabilities today, which are great, and there's no doubt in the next 2 or 3 years or something like that, it's going to be a different world. But I think there's a lot of things to sort of.
It's a fast-moving space.
It is, and also when you think about ChatGPT, it is just a front end. Like I say, so
it's the unknown black box that worries us, though. Really, it's like what's happening behind door number 2, right?
Exactly. Can I trust the data? Where's it come from?
Who built the model? What level are the rules going to?
Yeah, exactly. And I just found out recently about AI can hallucinate. So you can when I've read articles where it's like, oh, ChatGPT, be careful of ChatGPT, it lies. But essentially what seems to be happening there is, although the answer does live within the data, because of the way the algorithm is working, it just literally makes something up that it thinks is relevant. Yeah, and how do you find that out? So what we try and take sort of move away from that black box approach, and at least in our product today, when you kind of use that natural language generation to find and interrogate data, it shows you where it's got the answer from. So at least then you kind of got a little bit more, if you need to do investigating work, you can do. And that's our approach, is always trying to augment that type of capabilities rather than taking a black box approach.
It reminds me of the big at school when your teacher said, show me your homework, show me your working.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't show me the ends of it, I want to see the working stuff.
I haven't just
There's a black box, we can ask the questions, it gives us answers, we don't fully understand it. In fact, it reminds me of what Qlik has always done, and that is that, it's been very clear where the data came from, we know where you're putting the data, and we can see the working of how you produce the outcome, and I think that's probably, maybe there's a space in that for Qlik to do, not only data validation, but the machine learning validation as well.
Absolutely.
How did you arrive at the answer? But I did like your comment there with regard to sort of, simplification of the access to the data, and not having to actually be even a citizen data scientist. And it reminded me of, I guess, what we went through with the evolution of search engines, really. Instead of going through the directories like Yahoo, we could just type in a question and it would go and find it for us. And, so I guess another evolution. It brings me to my next question for you, though, and that is that we spoke about the issue of, you may not want to put data in there, and we don't know what data is coming out and answer the question, but that is that a lot of these tools are ideally used to work on our own data. It's all well and good to have a dinner party at 6 and say, give me a great recipe. And that's fun for a private entertainment thing. But if I'm a CIO and I'm asking about the next 3 months worth of operational costs, and I'm going to ask ChatGPT, it's got to know my data, right?
Exactly.
And so I guess I'd be keen to get your thoughts around not just the importance of data and privacy, because there's some fairly obvious ones there, but specifically in the context of companies that you deal with. Are you seeing any really obvious concerns where you're like, all right, we've already solved this from a basic use of the Qlik technologies, but when we bring in other tools, that brings a bunch of new boundaries you may not have control of, but you've still got to provide some of the governance and compliance.
It's an interesting one. I mean, Qlik has always had that kind of governance guide rails kind of thing built in. So we take very much sort of data privacy by design, security by design, rather than an afterthought. And we do that in our product and our own organisation as well, which is quite key. But from an organisational perspective, it's generally the most common kind of use cases around that self-service. A common theme between all our customers in terms of what they want to do is they want to make that data more accessible.
Of course.
Not just across the whole organisation. Some even want to make it more available to their own customers and partners or what have you. So that opens up a whole sort of area of concern in terms of are you getting the right people accessing the right data? So that's kind of always been inherent to kind of Qlik's design, and having those guardrails in and make sure you've got the right controls in place to make sure only the right people have access to the right data. And on the data integration side of things, we can plug into authentication systems and things like that, but that's catering more for the kind of IT area, data engineers, DBAs, that kind of stuff. And that's about giving them reliable systems that they know are connecting to their source systems, but without giving any impact, number one. But they're doing it in a kind of secure way that it's not then going to unnecessarily open the data up. They know it's only going to go where they want it to go, and then you have additional guardrails on that. So if you've got data integration and Qlik Analytics on top, then you can kind of control it that way, which is quite nice.
Your customer base has such a broad range of industries. You've got everything from manufacturing, engineering, all the way through to state and federal governments. You've got financial services, you've got retail, and all the things around that. So you've had to solve that data protection in your environments, as well as the on-prem and third-party hosted like data centers. I imagine you now get the situation where, as people are looking to adopt cloud first, as it were, which is essentially the new catch cry for all organizations, including Qlik, you've got to actually then help them provide reporting on where the data came from, the treatment you've applied to it, the accesses to it. What are some of those conversations like, and how do they run? For our audience, they're going to come into exactly the same problems if they haven't already, which is, Adam, we want to use your platform, we want to bring some data from Australia, from Germany, from the UK, from America. What are those conversations like? Because that must be a curious challenge to sort of go, look, we've got a secure platform, We've got like the connector factory with hundreds of ways to get to it. But then the first thing the CISO says is, but, right?
Yeah.
Well, where do you even start a conversation like that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think with all of those, when it's rather than try and boil the ocean, it's try and sort of start small and kind of prove a use case and go from there. And then it's maybe sort of definitely building a kind of relationship and understanding, having that right discussion in terms of understanding what you're trying to do, and then make sure that we can provide the right solution. And then having the controls in the product itself. So other things we're doing with cloud then is obviously we made an announcement we're having more regions, so that can be a sensitive issue in terms of my data absolutely positively has to stay just in this region, but I'm okay with it being on cloud. We're doing things like FedRAMP and obviously the ISO securities and things like that to make sure it is a secure environment. And then it's once you have got the data in there, again, like I said, it's making sure that only the right people get access to the right data. And I heard there was a good quote from Vanguard, one of our customers in the financial services space, says that they kind of architectured their solution using Qlik to make sure that people do the right thing and not the wrong thing.
Wow, that's a testament to win by.
Yeah, exactly.
So I imagine you also have the overlay in that it's all well and good to have the compliance and governance and protection and cybersecurity protections in your platform, but then they've also got their own environments, whether it's mobile devices or laptops or desktops, or their own security policies. So they're not only complying with state and federal government and international regulatory, but their own policy, security stance, right? Exactly. Overlaying with that. And I guess one of the things that I was curious to flow onto there was, we're now seeing real-time data becoming a normal thing. It's the new normal, as it were. And you guys are great at that. You're experts at it. And companies want to consume real-time data, but often that comes back to them moving very quickly, and sometimes things break. I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of the immediate impact that real-time data is having on some of the clients you're working with. Operationally, culturally, security-wise, data compliance, what are some of the things that arise there? Because plugging into real-time data is great, but if it's moving quickly and we don't know where it's going and whatever, then how do we respond to that?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the key things there is that the way that we provide our solutions is it does it in such a way that you do know where it's coming from and where it's going. So we're keeping that guardrail in place first and foremost. But in sticking with Vanguard as a financial services example, they're using real-time data, so they're modernizing their mainframe. They see Qlik as a kind of key enabler, and there's a great session done at AWS reInvent last year by Vanguard. I'd encourage people to watch that if they're interested in mainframe modernization. There's a whole load of good stuff there. But Glenn Wilkins, who did that, talks about delivering data in real time, but also spinning up kind of infrastructure as a code. So they've taken very much a DevOps approach. So internally, they're ready to kind of deal with the infrastructure to spin stuff up in secure governed way. They've got a small team of kind of the data engineers essentially that are doing that, but they're delivering infrastructure and data to well over 200 application type teams, and they're using automation to do that, but they know that they're building kind of robust, reliable infrastructure with Qlik delivering the data. I think there was a quote on there, and I believe he said they haven't had any downtime for the last 3 years, so they know they're delivering reliable, robust data. And then from that real time, or that data being delivered real time, they're able to then really offer like a competitive edge and increase their kind of customer satisfaction by opening up more services to them. Things like checking on your policies, and from a policy change and update, they can see it instantly rather than having to wait and kind of break down, have sort of bottlenecks and silos in there. So that's one of the key things that we're seeing there, is that it is breaking down the silos, and automation kind of helps with bringing in efficiency gains. If you can automate those kind of mundane, heavy tasks that can create brittle processes that can break, and you know that it's reliable, you know that it's delivering data securely, then you can kind of set and forget and concentrate on the higher value things, like delivering value to your customers and innovating out into the cloud like most companies are doing. So that's one great thing. And real-time information, it just means that organizations can work on the most freshest data that's available to it, and then that's where you can start making intelligent and better decisions rather than kind of looking in the past or working on stale data. Another great example I heard recently is in the UK, from a retail perspective, there is an organisation that's essentially managed to do dynamic supply chains, if I can call that. So during the pandemic, when everything kind of locked down, the UK and like the rest of the country, when many people were furloughed, there was a big demand in DIY, right? So do stuff yourself. So it happened in the summer. We had a nice in the UK, so nice weather. So everyone started painting their fences and this and the other. So demand for paint went up. There you go. And we.
I finally own a hammer and a saw and some nails.
Yeah, exactly. I can be very dangerous with those. But yeah, so demand for paint went up, and this particular sort of do-it-yourself retailer could see this because they were delivering their data in real time.
Wow.
With Qlik, they could see the effect that was happening on their supply chain, and they had it back to the suppliers as well, and they were able to identify where the stockist of most paint was, which was in a different country, and rather than have the supply chain originally go to the central warehouse, they knew where the most demand was as in stores, and they actually redirected the supply directly into the store, so it could go from there. And they're doing more and more stuff like that, and they could not do that if they didn't have real-time information. No. That's a huge impact.
That's amazing. Well, there's pre-pandemic we had to deal with this, but certainly in the pandemic we sort of created the term micro-fulfillment, which was what you're talking about, going directly to stores. Yeah. And that's only possible if you know what's happening in real time. You can't take last month's data because those orders don't exist anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the other things I was really keen to get your thoughts on with regard to the impact of real-time data, and I'm just wondering if this is a thing, is what other types of impacts that organizations may need to consider that they haven't thought about. There's generational challenges around age groups and so forth. There's corporate cultures. Maybe the sales team are fairly dynamic and innovative, and the engineering team maybe are a bit more staid. What other impacts have you seen other than the obvious ones that you could sort of call out that you've seen from whether it's cultural or behavioral, or even things like some organizations may not have done a lot of training with data literacy, so two different people in a room are having two different conversations about what they think data is. Yeah. Are you seeing any other sort of edge sort of cases of impact of real-time data that you hadn't expected or that surprised you? Because there's some obvious ones. Obviously, making good decisions is great, and current decisions, but often there are other ancillary impacts that just need to be brought back into the fold.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So I know data literacy is one I see all the time. We've had data scientists or actuaries or engineers, and they know how to do that. We've had Perl programmers and Ruby on Rails, and our studio people who know how to work with data. But then when it gets to our HR people or our sales team or whatever, they don't want just data, and they don't know what to do with the dashboard. So we end up seeing organizations having to go through a bunch of training and education around awareness of what data actually is and the benefit of it and the literacy. So I imagine that, and maybe it hasn't happened yet, but I suspect there's a whole bunch of other ancillary things that will pop up where people go, ooh, okay, now we're expecting people to make real-time decisions that they've never done before. They're a bit stressed about that.
Actually, real time. Yeah. So what's interesting now, kind of data literacy is absolutely core, and there's been plenty of examples where our customers are talking about how it's really important to upskill your people that are touching data in some shape or form, whether they're using it directly from a dashboard or whether it's being fed to them on a mobile device or embedded into a system that they're using on a day-to-day basis. So we, a few years ago, really sort of, I think, spearheaded the kind of data literacy program. We have a lot of courses available that start off as free, and a whole load of other packages that can help them. They're sort of product agnostic, which I think is amazing, and then it goes down into the core elements of understanding data. So making data less scary, as I heard one person tell me to kind of paraphrase. So that's really important, definitely, to make sure that all your organisation are comfortable enough to understand that, yes, the data is telling me this and this is how I can communicate it, but also be data skeptical as well and say, actually, is that right, and challenge it, and right
data validation, which you do natively anyway.
Yeah, exactly, and then kind of have that. So that's definitely one area, and then the other area in terms of, like you were saying, is like, I think you're touching on, like, are you drinking from a fire hose? There's this real-time data coming in. So I think there's enough kind of functionality in our solutions from, once we deliver the real-time data. If they choose to, we've always been sort of BI tool agnostic from delivering the data, which is great. And James Fisher made a point that we will always do that, but we firmly believe if you add the analytics piece on top, then you start unlocking a whole load of potential there. One, making data easier to kind of discover and explore, but you can start automating things from data. So I think the surprising thing is with app automation that we've got, that opens up so many different use cases, and it can kind of tackle what you're saying there in terms of if something happens, I need to do something about it, and that can often be kind of repetitive manual tasks. Maybe it's like, I need to raise a ticket because something's broken. So we have a whole load of connectivity from app automation to trigger workflows between kind of two different cloud applications. So it's not necessarily about moving data, but it's about kind of reacting on something and then triggering another action. So it could be something very simple like an email alert, and that can be delivered or embedded into the system that you use daily, like Teams or Slack, for example. So it's not so scary then in terms of drinking from a fire hose. It's just like, something's coming to Des. Des now needs to do something about it. So it's just part of the natural workflow, all the way through to kind of starting to automate that flow, like I said, raise a ticket in ServiceNow, and that can create another actions and take advantage of all the good stuff that platform does. And that's I'm really intrigued and always fascinated to hear the value that people are getting out of that, because there is a myriad of use cases there. We have,
if you can think of it, you can do it almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's
as long as someone's checking, you should be doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really excited about that. And then I won't even go into the predictive analytics and all the other side of things.
That's a whole different conversation.
And
we will come back to that. Maybe we'll have a podcast on that. Well, I wonder if you could wrap us up with a little bit of crystal ball gazing, and I really appreciate all of the insights you've shared there, and I'm sure we could have a 2-day conversation about that. There's been an enormous amount of exciting new announcements and all kinds of great things and stuff you're doing with talent and so forth coming up. But given your role, around the product marketing and your unique lens that your role affords you, if you were going to kind of share some thoughts around the next 12 to 18 months in this space, what's your general sense of kind of given the state of the world as it is, geopolitical, economical, etc. Where do we think in the next 12 to 18 months, what should people be thinking about as far as our audience is concerned? With respect to the next year and a half, to then consider having conversations with you and your team about how you can help them with some of those challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I think generally it all stems from, have you got some form of problem or challenge that you're trying to address. So is it a data problem in terms of I've got data locked up into one particular source, I need to do something better with it that source system can't do, and kind of our secret sauce is the ability to be able to be kind of data agnostic in terms of we can help you deal pretty much with any source as long as that data is accessible in some shape or form. We can help you unlock it, deliver that where you need it to be in the format it needs to be, and then kind of take it from there. And then as you said, with the talent acquisition coming in, that's going to create a really excited about that.
Can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's going to really create a quite solid, robust data integration side of things, from unlocking the data to understanding the quality of it. Trusting data is going to be really important, and that's going to be a really key enabler. And that then stems on, once you've got a solid kind of foundation to deliver data, it's trusted, then you can go off and do other bigger and better things out of it. So that's really exciting, and I think that's the kind of questions that people need to be will probably be asking is like, what do I need? Where's the biggest problem, and where's the sort of highest value that will come out of it? And we take a very much kind of partnership approach with customers. It's not just like, oh, there's your tool, off you go. So it's definitely about building relationships, and QlikWorld's been a testament to that. When you hear customers speak, it's about they're long-term customers, and more often than not started small, proved value, and then it kind of snowballs from there. It creates that kind of ripple effect or butterfly effect, and you start increasing in adoption, and people say, oh, if you did that really good thing, then that might work for me. And the other side that we haven't touched on as well, I think, is the whole operational analytics as well. So there's one area of data to sort of delivering insights, but the other thing that is also quite a popular use case is making sure that what you've set up in your environment is working correctly in the right way. Is it being optimal? Can you make any tweaks? And again, going back to Ford, they mentioned that they were also using their data to make sure that they were delivering the right kind of apps, the right kind of data, and that they were working correctly. And if they weren't being used, then shut that down and deliver more value somewhere else. So it's a full kind of 360 world as well. So
it's an exciting future, and who better than to lead us there than Qlik and your team. Thank you so much for making time to catch up with me. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts on each of these things, and I cannot wait to see where the next 12 to 18 months takes us. I'd love to catch up and have you on the show again, and I'm looking forward to coming back to QlikWorld next year. But congratulations on a great event this year. It's just so great to be back together around people. It's kind of funny how quickly we've fallen back into that what was normal and back into it now. So I'm very excited about the fact that the world's righting itself very quickly.
Likewise,
But anyway, we'll see you again on the show, but in the meantime, travel safe, and thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate all your insights.
Nice one. Thanks, Ed. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Adam. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.